Sabihi Ajma'in Amma Ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Jazakallah khair for attending our fifth and final event of Discover Islam Week, and I do apologize for the delay. We will inshallah start by reciting the Quran. So if I can invite our brother Abdul Qadir to recite Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Alaq from verse number 125 to verse number 127, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فمن يريد الله أن يهديه يشرح صدره للإسلام ومن يريد أن يضله يجعل صدره ضيقا حرجا كأنما يصعد في السماء كذلك يجعل الله الرجس على الذين لا يؤمنون وهذا صراط ربك مستقيما قد فصلنا الآيات لقوم يذكرون لهم دار السلام عند ربهم وهو وليهم بما كانوا يعملون صدق الله العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, let me begin by apologising for the lateness today. We came from Manchester and we didn't anticipate the levels of traffic that we got, so I know some of you have been waiting for quite a while, so inshallah we'll get straight to it. Secondly, jazakallah khair to the brothers for inviting me down today, and just want to congratulate them on the Islamic Awareness Week that they've been running the events that have been going on all week. Now, the title I was given was my journey to Islam. Why did I choose Islam? Why is Islam the truth? And like most stories, mine begins at home. Mine begins where I grew up. It begins with my parents, my mum and my dad. Now my parents are Christian, not practicing, but Christian by name rather than nature. And I have an older brother. Me and him, we were brought up very much in the same way. As we were growing up, we were surrounded by the usual things. Like I say, the religion, it was always there, but it was in the background. It was never taken seriously in my family. So we would go to church, which was on a Sunday, and that was about the limit to it. Religion was something which, it was a set of phrases that would be said every now and then, but it never had any real impact on the way that we lived our lives, and we were never really brought up to view it in that way. It was just, yeah, you're a Christian, it's in the background. And as I grew up, I used to, like I say, attend Sunday school. And as I was there, I used to think to myself, you know, why do I have to come here? What's the point? And I challenged my mum on it one day. And I said to her, Mum, why is it that you make me go to this place? Why is it every year that, you know, we have to, they used to have a big thing at Christmas. Why do I have to go there? That's embarrassing. I don't really like going. It's boring. I want to spend my Sunday mornings in bed. And my mum, to her credit, she said, look, she said, when you're 11, you don't have to go anymore. Because the school that we want you to get into is a Church of England school. And you have to have X amount of hours of this Sunday school logged so you can get in. So at least she was honest with me. And I said, okay, that's fine. The day I got the letter saying, yeah, you've got into the school, that was it. I've never been to a church since, never went in again. Now, what that did was leave an impression on me that, okay, religion and the idea of God, it's not really an important thing. And you could almost say, well, you're bound to think that because of the way in which your parents gave it to you. But that would be unfair, because there are two things we have to consider, and I'll come back to this later, inshallah, is that Christianity that I was brought up with, number one, it is just a religion. It is just a set of things that people believe. It doesn't really tell you how to live your life or what you should do in every single situation that you face. And so naturally, I was going to come across things which that belief I had didn't really have an answer for. And the second thing is that the society that we live in, Britain, that we live in today, is a very secular place, and it tells you that, yeah, you can believe whatever you want. But that's really your own belief, and you should, you keep that to yourself, keep it behind closed doors, and don't really go out with it, don't go spreading it around, because we like to separate church from everything else. So naturally, the understanding I was going to have would be a watered down. So like I say, I got into the school. I'm 11 years old now, and I remember it. I remember getting there and thinking, okay, fine, that's all done now. I still believed kind of in God at this point, but I thought, okay, it's, the hymns and things like that are done. But of course, it's a Church of England school, so every morning we have to have hymns, every few weeks we have communion. And I remember thinking to myself that, okay, we're doing this, and is this really, if God's out there, is this really what he wants us to do? Is this really all he asked us to do, to just chant some things and, pretty much not have any effect on our lives beyond that? And I started to ask people within the school, not just my friends, but teachers as well. And I started to say, okay, why is it that we believe in these things? How do we know that God exists? And the response I got was, you just do. Don't ask these questions. You shouldn't ask these things. Church of England school. And I said, okay, but how do we know that the Bible is necessarily true? Again, yeah, well, you just have to believe it. That was the response I got. You have to have faith. You have to believe it. I said, is there any proof? Maybe, but you still don't ask these questions, just believe it. And then I came up with a third question that, okay, how do you know that the way of life that you are living is the best one out there? It's better than what everyone else is doing? Guess what the response was? Just is. You just have to believe it. So I started to think, okay, these people are doing all these things, they don't even know why they're doing it, and a lot of them don't even have answers to these questions that I'm asking. So around age 11, 12, I thought, you know what, it doesn't make sense. With all the injustice and all the hardship in the world, there is no God. And that was it, I rejected it, rejected religion completely, the notion of it. And at age 12 became an atheist. There was nothing out there. So then, you can imagine a 12, 13, 14-year-old, as you start to grow up, I've now completely removed the idea of God, of heaven or hell, of any accountability from my life completely. And so what this understanding gives me is that, okay, that means if I don't have to answer for any of this when it's all over, I can do whatever I want. There is no right, there is no wrong. There is no heaven, there is no hell. And so a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old thinking he can do whatever he wants, I did a lot of silly things and I got into some trouble. But to me, it was fine, because effectively I was my own God. I was in the position to decide, yeah, this is what I want to do. And if I want to do it, I'll do it. Who can stop me? Who do I have to answer to? Now, that's all well and good to say that. But as you grow up and you get a little bit older, and as school turned to college and college turned to university, as I got older, I started to find that all I was doing was going out constantly and just living my life the way that I was. And it wasn't adding up to anything. It wasn't building up to anything. There was no sense that I'm fulfilling any kind of purpose. And around the time I graduated, well, towards the end of university, I started to think about this more and more, that, you know what, Is this really all that there is to my life? That yeah, okay, fine, I can go out, I can do whatever I want pretty much. But why don't I feel like I've achieved anything? Why do I still feel empty? So I started to ask the people around me. And I said, okay, you know how we go out every night and we get wasted and then we say we'll never do it again and then the next night we do the same thing. How do we know that our way of life is the best way of life? How do we know that this is better than what everyone else is doing? And guess what answer I got? It just is. You just have to kind of believe it and do it. And I thought, I've heard that before somewhere. The last time I asked this question, I got the exact same answer. So I dug a little deeper. And again, what did I find? Every single person that I asked, and we were all going out doing it, they all said, oh, look, just shut up, let's just enjoy ourselves. I thought, why? Is there nothing more to this? And then I graduated from university, and this is going back now, 2005? No, 2008, I'm not talking about. 2008 I graduated. And I started to think, right, I've gone through education, I've graduated, now what do? I go out, I get my job, I 9 to 5 it till I'm 70 and then I die, and that's my life. And then it really hits me then like a brick wall. Is that it? Is that actually everything? Is that all I'm going to amount to? Because if it is, I don't like the sound of that. It doesn't sound very appealing to me. And so that summer, after I left university, I really started to think about it more and more, and because education was gone now, I'd finished, there was nothing there to distract me. Now, I looked into a few different things, and what I found was that, okay, I'm going to make a decision. If this is all there is out there, and there's nothing, no kind of purpose to life, no reason that we're here, that's fine, and I'll carry on living my life the way that I am. But I'm just going to check. I'm going to make sure before I do anything, and commit to anything. I want to be absolutely certain that what I'm doing is correct. So I come back to the idea of God, and I thought, okay, let's have another look. Let's just check if I didn't miss anything, because I'm fairly sure there's nothing out there. Looked into Christianity again, same thing. Looked into a few different things, again, same thing. Now what had happened, while I'd been at uni, some of you might hate me for this, when I went, the fees were only 1,200 quid a year. That's all I had to pay. So I got a part-time job and paid for university myself on the weekends. And what happened was, the place where I worked throughout uni, a lot of Muslims worked there. An awful lot of Muslims. It was a massive place, and about 1,000 people maybe worked there across all the shifts. And out of those, a good 75% were Muslim. So we're talking at least 750 Muslims are there. Now in those 3 years that I'd worked there until this point, I'd made a few friends, I discussed with people, and I always like to have little debates and things like that. But out of all of those Muslims, like I say, a minimum 750, take a guess how many had actually come to me to speak to me about Islam. Who had ever mentioned it? One. Out of 750, only one brother ever actually said anything that, oh yeah, okay. It was nothing major. He just used to say, oh yeah, you see, we believe this because I'm a Muslim, and so on and so forth. Oh, I'm just going to pray because that's what we do. We do it 5 times a day. So I had a rough idea. He was never trying to convert me. He was just telling me about his beliefs. So it always stuck in my mind that, oh yeah, that guy, Muslim, yeah. And so what happens is, when I come back to this now and I'm looking at all the different ways of life, all the different ideas I've got, I thought, okay, what about Islam? And this is around the time that the cartoons of the Prophet ﷺ were published, the Danish cartoons. And so I'd seen it on the news. I think they'd been reprinted actually, and again there'd been protests across Europe. And I'd seen it and thought, okay, I remember when I was growing up, when somebody said anything about Christianity, like the priest jokes and things, it was always just, it's fun. The Christians would say, it's funny, but just leave us alone, you can take the mick out of us, but leave us alone. That was their reaction, that was the bet they had. And then I thought, whoa, when somebody insults Islam, all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of people are out on the street standing up for what they believe in, that they won't let anybody challenge their belief. They care about it that much. I thought, okay, interesting. Maybe there's something out there, some perspective they've got that maybe I haven't seen, maybe they know something I don't. Maybe I'll look into it. Now that's not, I should become a Muslim. That's just me thinking, okay, what makes them do that? What makes these guys tick? So I was at work one weekend, and I went downstairs to where this guy who chatted to me a couple of times about Islam. I went to find him, and he could see I had something on my mind. And I said to him, I said, look, I want to talk to you. I've been thinking lately, is there more to life than maybe what I thought? Is there more going on than what I believe? In his eyes lit up. He knew. He thought, okay. And he goes to me, he goes, well, let's just cut to the chase. He goes, are you talking about God or not? And to be honest, I wasn't, but I said, well, it's possible. I mean, I don't think He said, okay. He said, we can chat about it. He said, by all means, I'll discuss it with you. He said, but I want to just ask you something first. I said, okay. He goes, if I prove to you that God actually exists, what would that mean for you? And I thought, well, he's not going to be able to do that. Bring it on. So I went, it's fine. If you prove God exists, that changes everything. Never did I think you'd be able to do it. I said, if you prove it, of course, that means there's a creator, that means there's a heaven, there's a hell. It means you have to answer to somebody. It means I was put here for a reason. So yeah, that changes everything. He said, okay. He said, we won't do it here, we won't discuss here at work. We'll meet outside of work later on in the week, and we'll chat about it. So I took his number, and during the week, I gave him a call, and that Friday night we went out. We went to get some food. I can't remember what we had. I can remember what we talked about. And I came out of that conversation. There was this brother and another two brothers. And the seed that was planted in my mind was, okay, very simple question. Where did you come from? Now, when they asked me that, they said, okay, where did you come from? You just have to go away and think about that, that's all. I thought, right, I came from mum and dad. Easy. Finished, answered. And then I started that night and I thought, okay, yeah, and well, they came from what, my grandma and my granddad and my great-grandparents and so on and so forth. And they came from the monkeys, and they came from the dinosaurs, and they came from the wizards, and whatever else they used to do. Until it gets to a point where I thought, okay, forget all this. Let's go right back to the beginning. Where did everything come from? Which, of course, is, as they say, the start, the Big Bang, or the origin of the universe. Now, I looked into this a lot. Where did the universe come from? Where did all of creation come from? And when you look at it, you find that nobody really knows. What they say is that the Big Bang happened or the universe began, but that was a reaction to something else. And whatever that was, we don't know, so we're not going to talk about it, and that's science. And that we know there was something there, but that wasn't, not important, I say. But I thought, how can that be? How can that be that if that thing that they don't want to talk about, that they don't want to say what caused this Big Bang, surely that's the start. So I look into it. The way they explain it is through something called string theory. Very popular theory. And I'll just quickly skim over it. As it goes, is that prior to everything, all we have was matter and antimatter. And basically matter is +1, antimatter is -1. So when the two collided, it equals 0, therefore the universe came from nothing. That's their explanation. Now I read that and I thought, ooh, clever bit of science there. Maybe that answers the question. Where did we all come from? Makes sense on paper. But then I thought, okay, brothers, if we all run outside now and said, okay, let's have a game of football, yeah? We're not all going to say, right, basically, this guy's the referee, and if you tackle once and it's a bit dodgy, you get a yellow card, and if you tackle quite bad, you'll get a red card, and if you kick the ball in the net, that's 1 goal. It doesn't count as 3, it's 1. But we wouldn't go through all the rules. Why not? Because we already know. We already know that we don't need to go over it, because it's already established. If matter and antimatter equal -1 and +1 and they collide, that means the laws of physics existed before the universe did. That means the rules were already decided before anything was there. So who wrote the rule? So I went a step back. Okay, so there was clearly something there, this matter, this antimatter, or whatever was there. Where did that come from? And you can go on and go on and go on. But eventually you'll get to the point that whatever you come up with, whatever you think about, if that was created by something else, then that's not at the beginning. If this thing created that thing, then forget that. I want to know who created this and who created that. And you'll just keep going on and on until you come to a realization, and this is one that hit me as well. That, okay, if we're talking about where did everything come from, what was at the start, then what we're looking at is something that can't have been created by anything else, because then it wouldn't be at the start. Which means there's two explanations. Number one, it decided to create itself, which is, well, let's look at that. Can you create yourself if you don't exist? No. If you're asleep, you can't think, right, I'm going to wake up now. Fudger would be, mashallah, do something else if we could do that. But no, you can't just decide to exist if you're not there. So that eliminates that possibility. There's only one other explanation. If it wasn't created by anything else, and it didn't create itself, it was there all along. It was there all along. It can't have had any kind of beginning. Now this sets a very interesting precedent. Because what this means to us is that essentially this thing must have certain qualities. This thing that wasn't created by anything else, what can we work out about it? Okay. If it's there all along, that means it's infinite. If it decided to create everything, that means it's got a will of its own. If it's been there forever, i.e. it was there forever, it was flawless. People, things, they get old, they die, they rot. This thing, if it was everlasting, can't have had any imperfection. So now I'm thinking, okay, there's an infinite thing, it's flawless, and it's got a will of its own. Sounds an awful lot like God, but I wasn't ready to admit it. No. There's just something out there. I admit that, because I couldn't disprove this argument. So I came back to the brother, and I said, all right, this is where I'm at. This is what I've got. He said, very good. He said, next thing we're going to talk about is the Quran. Now, when he said that, that was when it twigged in my mind then that, he's trying to convert me. Now, my initial reaction was, whoa, okay, yeah, fine, nice knowing you, but that's the end of that. And I kind of backed off, because as soon as he said it, I knew what his kind of game plan was, and I thought, well, I just wanted to kind of find out a bit more about it, and, let's not go there. Didn't talk to him for a couple of days, and I started to think that, well, okay, I was talking about I want to make sure that what I'm doing is the best way of life, and that this is definitely true. Now this guy's got something, I haven't been able to disprove the last thing he gave me. What kind of a loser am I if I just run away and don't take the discussion on? How insincere is that? If I'm saying I want the truth, and then the moment this guy says something that I don't really like the sound of, I just run away. Doesn't really add up. So I went back to him and I said, okay, what have you got? Let's carry on. And he goes, okay, go away. And just read about the Quran, just look into it. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll go and look into it. It's the Bible for Muslims, whatever. I go home, go on Wikipedia, go on Google, have a little look into the Quran, and I knew a bit about, all I knew really was that it was the Holy Book of Islam. And as I look into it, okay, so it's not really a book, is it? No. This is a series of verses. This is speech that was just written down. I thought, okay, that's interesting. Well, didn't know that. Let's look into it a bit more. How many chapters are there? There's 114. Okay. And when you, well, most of you are in uni, the first page on a book is acknowledgements. I'd like to thank this guy, I'd like to thank that guy. Turn the page over and then the book actually starts. So when I got my Quran, I look at it and okay, page 1, what's this? The opening. Okay, right, never mind, don't need to read that. Al-Fatiha. Next page, Surah Al-Baqarah. What's the first line? Because when I read a university book, do you know what the first line always said? I'd like to acknowledge this person and that person. This is an academic work, and if I've made any mistakes, I apologize. The first verse I read, this is the book wherein there is contained no doubt. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. If that's the case, then where did this book come from? So I started to look into the history. And as I mentioned, okay, it's a series of verses that are revealed over a period of time. And these verses, they deal with the deepest themes in the most eloquent language. They talk about the way to run a society, the way to reform an individual, the way to basically solve all of mankind's problems. And they're explained in a way that gets straight to the point, and yet it's so beautifully descriptive. And all this comes from the mouth of a man who can't actually read. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I thought, okay, alright, yeah, they say that. That's their claim, but how do I know that this is actually true? Fair question. How do I know that this book is actually so special? So I started to read it. And what is in there, and this is in the English, of course, it does kind of make me sit up and think, okay, that's interesting. Some of the arguments it presented, because even a lot of the stuff about where did I come from and why am I here, Quran goes through this, talks about these things. And I thought, alright, the only way I can be sure is we need to verify the book. Because I'm going on the assumption here that it's not true. What do I find? I find that, okay, even at the time that this book first came about, I wasn't the first one to think that this isn't true. There were people back then who thought the same thing. And so the Quran, of course, is in Arabic, and the Quran comes down at a time when the Arabic language is at its apex. There are poets at the time who can basically, they've got the best lyrics, essentially. They can come out with poetry that blows the minds of the people who are there. And the biggest thing that a tribe could have was to have the best poet in their tribe. And then along comes this guy who can't read, and he starts with verses. There's something else. They're not just tribal singing songs, they're not just saying, oh, we want to battle. No, this is something else entirely. This tells people how to live their entire lives. And even the poets at that time say, we can't match this. What this guy's got, we can't match it. But still there were people who didn't believe. And so the Quran, it gave them a challenge. Because the Quran's claim is this book is from God. And it says, if you don't believe, if you don't believe that this book comes from God, there's a challenge for you. Produce 10 surahs, like what you see in this book. So all you've got to do is 10 chapters, matching the language that's in the Quran. And that means then that if somebody else can copy it, this must have come from a man as well. This can't have come from God if someone else can do it. And even with all these poets at the time, even with the Arabic language being the way it was at the time, nobody could do this. And the people, they wanted to. We all know how much they hated the Prophet ﷺ. They wanted to do it, but none of them can do it. None of them can meet this challenge. So what does the Quran say? It says, okay, can't do that. Produce one chapter, like what you see in this book. Just one. Just match the language for one chapter. And of course, the shortest surah in the Quran is only 3 verses long. 3 verses. So that's what it's saying. All you have to do is 3 lines. If you can match the language in this book, then you've done it. You've proven that a man made this book up. But nobody can do it. Nobody can do it. So I read that and I think, right, okay, yeah, that's interesting. Nobody's been able to disprove that this book is from God. But that was back then. And you know, there weren't as many people who could read and write. It's been 1400 years since, I'm sure somebody's done it. So I started to look into it a bit more. And more recent history. Because people have had a good crack at it. Again, a lot of us might know about the Orientalists and what they tried to do. That as places like Britain and France, as they started to spread out and colonize the world, everywhere they went to America, they went to India, they went to Africa. Everywhere they went, they found that, okay, yeah, these people, initially they'll resist, but over time they just give in and they just submit to us. Empire. So no matter where we go, it's okay. Eventually, they'll stop fighting us and they'll just have to submit to our superior authority. Everywhere they went, this was the case, except for the Muslim world. And when they go there, what they find is that these Muslims, no matter what we do, they'd rather die than submit to us. They're submitting to some other guy. They're not listening to us. They don't seem to recognize our authority. Why is that? And they looked into it and they found that, okay, they claim they've got something better. They claim that their book is better than what we're bringing. That their way of life is better than ours. So what we have to do to break the will of the Muslims, we just disprove their book and that's it, done. So they tried and they spent a lot of money. And professors and institutes were set up, not just in Britain, France, Germany, lots of places, with this exact objective. Just produce a chapter like what you see in the Quran. And if you do that, you've disproven it. There's a lot of Muslims in this room, so that can only mean one thing. They didn't succeed. Again, it was never done, and a lot of the professors who were commissioned to do this actually took a shahada. Because they said, look, it's impossible. There's more, and scientists, everything have looked at this book and then said, okay, the language that we see in here, no matter what we do, we can match certain parts of it, but we can't get the whole thing. And And that's what the Quran actually says. It says, never will you be able to do it. No matter what. It says, get all of your helpers together, you'll never be able to do it. So now, in my head, I've got these two things which I cannot possibly disprove. That there has to be infinite, flawless, one. It's out there. Because the logic which I use, the thought which I use to get there, can't be disproven. And number two, that there's a bug which has challenged every single person to try and disprove it. If you don't believe it, disprove it. And nobody's done it. So now I've got these two things which I know I cannot deny, and I think, right, okay, so it's got to be true then. But, you know, what do I do about it? And then it hits me that, okay, that means I have to become a Muslim if this is true. That means I have to start. That means there is a God. That means I was wrong. That means that my entire life has been a waste of time until now. There is a heaven, there is a hell, there is accountability, there is a purpose to my life. And guess what I did? You think I went back to see the brother straight away? No. I thought, me become a Muslim, I can't do that. It's just ridiculous. Where I lived was a almost 100% non-Muslim area. Just the place I worked happened to have the Muslims. And it was unheard of that this kind of thing would happen. So again, what did I do? I backed off and I thought, nah, you know what, I'm just not ready for that. I don't think I can do it. And again, I kind of withdrew from the brother at work and I said hello to him and stuff. And he was always saying to me, you know, how are you doing? How are you doing? As if to say, you know, when are you converting? When are you converting? And I was always like, yeah, I'm okay, you know, I'll see you later. And I just used to keep avoiding him. And then what happens one day is we sit down for dinner at break time at work. And I'm sat there as a Muslim guy, and there's a non-Muslim guy. And the non-Muslim guy across the table, he pipes up and he says to the Muslim, he says, well, you know, come on, why do you believe in God? Don't you think it's a bit stupid? Like as if saying that's just going to, you know, make him not be a Muslim. He goes, don't you think it's a bit stupid? And the Muslim guy, and I'm sat there and I think, right, okay, I'm going to sit back and watch this, because now he's going to say to him, yeah, look, there's an infinite source and it's one and it's you know, it's got a will of its own, and the Quran, there's a linguistic challenge and nobody's been able to disprove it. And do you know what he says? He says, look man, it says Allah in your hand. He says, look, this is to someone who doesn't even know what Arabic looks like. He goes, look, it says Allah in your hand. And he says, haven't you seen trees? Haven't you seen the sky? What do you think when you see a tree? Don't you think of the Creator? And the non-Muslim guy goes, I think it's a nice tree. Because this isn't going to prove that God exists to somebody. And I sat there thinking, oh my days, this Muslim, he's getting murdered. I need to do something. And so out of nowhere, I pipe up and I start to the non-Muslim guy going, listen, yeah, where did everything come from? And I go through the whole thing to this non-Muslim guy. A non-Muslim proving Islam to another non-Muslim. And we go through the whole discussion, and it was about maybe 10 minutes over the break. And we get to the end of the talk, and this guy sat across the table, he kind of sits there in silence for a little while, and he goes, you know what? He goes, it's an interesting point. I can't really disprove what you've said. But I don't care. he goes, I'm just going to live my life the way that I want to. And he gets up and he walks off. And I sat there thinking, well, this guy's an idiot. I've just proven to him beyond any doubt. He can't disprove a word I've said that Islam has to be true. And this guy's just ignored it. What an idiot. And I sat there for a minute and I thought, yeah, hang on a minute. I've proven to myself beyond any doubt that this is true. Beyond any doubt, this Quran is the word of God. And look at me. I'm just as bad as him. So I got up, I went, I found the brother at work, I said to him, okay, I'm ready. And the Friday after that, I took the Shahada. Now that was April in 2009. When I first came to this brother, it was about November 2008. So we're talking about 6 months for that whole thing to happen. A lot of back and forth, a lot of discussion. And what I found during that time, and this is, I said I'd come back to it, was that whenever I had a question about Islam, whenever I wanted a perspective on something, as soon as I went to the brothers, bang, it was there. They had an answer. Oh, Islam says this about that. Oh, Islam says this. I thought these guys are making it up. It can't possibly have all these answers. And then I'd go back and I'd find it. Oh, yeah, it does actually say that. They do have an opinion on how to anything you want. Islam's got some pretty detailed opinions. And I thought, nah, you can't possibly have rules for these things, but it does. There is nothing that you can come up with that Islam does not have a rule for. Why? Because Islam comes from the infinite. The remit of Islam is limitless. It can solve every single problem that mankind has. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Ibrahim, Alif Lam Ra, كِتَابًا أَنزَلْنَاهُ إِلَيْكَ لِتُخْرِجَ النَّاسَ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. We have revealed this book unto thee so that you may lead mankind out of darkness and into light. That this has been revealed to solve your every problem, and it's come from none other than God himself. And yet what I found was that, okay, there are a lot of Muslims out there who, don't they know this? Don't they know that this is the truth? Because I see them doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Surely they know that Islam is correct. And then this was something new to me, that yeah, they know, but they're not necessarily doing, everything that they should be. And I thought, well, they've got the best thing ever. Now I'm going to give you an example. When it came out, it was the best thing ever. iPhone 4. Not now. If you got one of these and you said, look what I've got. I spent 500 quid on it. Trying to show it off to everyone. And they went, okay, what's it for? And you went, well, you see that wobbly table, yeah? You just put it underneath here and it stops it wobbling. It's great. What would you say to the guy? Are you an idiot? It's not for that. It's not meant to do that. It can send text, it can ring people. Angry Birds. Don't you know what it can do? You'd explain it to the person and say, it's capable of so much more. A human being is capable of so much. We have eyes that can look at things they're not supposed to. We have hands that can get involved in things they're not supposed to. Tongues that can utter things they're not supposed to. Feet that can carry us to places we're not meant to go. But those same eyes, they can cry at night out of fear of their Lord. Those same hands can turn the pages of the Quran. That tongue can enjoin the good. It can forbid those things which are evil. And those feet, they can carry you in the path of Allah. It's all about knowing how to use it. Now, if I was doing that with my iPhone, the first thing you'd say is, haven't you read the manual? That tells you what you're supposed to be doing. Why? Why should I read the manual? If I have a faulty TV by Sony, would I, okay, it's by Sony, I'm going to read the manual for my microwave. No. Why wouldn't I read that manual? Because that one's not from the people who made the TV. They don't know what's best for it because they didn't make it. If I have a problem with my iPhone, I won't read the HTC manual, I'll read the iPhone manual. Because Apple made that. They made the iPhone and they know what's best for it. What's the manual for us? Because our Creator has given us one. And yet what you see is Muslims, they refer to everything else. They refer to every other way of life. They go into everything that they shouldn't. Okay, yeah, Islam's great and I believe in it, but it's not really the solution for my every problem. It's not going to solve things, it's unrealistic. I'll go elsewhere. These people have misunderstood. Just like if you read the manual for the wrong thing, you're doing exactly the same. The Quran comes from our Creator, and that outlines everything that we need to solve our every problem. And what I found since taking the Shahada, I went through a lot of hardship, but just by sticking to that, alhamdulillah, I found my way. And what can I say, man? I could never be more grateful. So, Allahu Akbar.
Jazakallah, brother. We'll now proceed to our Q&A session. So if you've got any questions, please raise your hand, or you can also write your questions on the paper and pass it down, please.
You mentioned in terms of after you left university, you left the distractions as well. So, in a sense, you're implying that university deterred you from finding Islam or discovering Islam. What would you advise us, or what would you advise us to advise on Muslims?
With that one, I mean, like I say from personal experience, it was always bugging me in the back of my mind, but it was never something that I felt the need to address until really I had the time to. And yet, had somebody pushed that issue on me, had they known what I was thinking at the time, they could quite easily have brought that bubbling up to the surface and probably challenged me earlier on it, made me think earlier on it. And this is coming back to the point I just made at the end there, that because we've got Islam, and because it is what it is the truth and it is the best way of life, sometimes we don't appreciate that people who don't have that, and people who are living other ways of life, they will think that what they're doing is the best thing for them to do. because they don't know about any alternative. If you live on your own, and let's say we'll use the iPhone again. If you're doing something a certain way and there's a quicker way to do it, how are you going to know until somebody tells you? You're not going to have a clue. Just like people today, they'll live their life the way that they're living, and they may not even be content with it. Look outside, look at what people are doing. People are sick of it here. Their lives, the economy, the struggle that people are going through. Look at things like the Occupy movement. People are fed up of the way of life that they've been given here. And yet they don't feel they can do anything because they don't really know that there's an alternative. Yeah, they know there's a thing called Islam. But where do they get their Islam from? What tells them about Islam? The Daily Mail, Sky News, these things. And they don't paint a very nice picture of us. And so when these things come out and there is this negative propaganda, that's a good way to actually start a discussion. To actually give them a perspective on Islam and say, you know, Islam actually says this. And really, it's not about just tell them about Islam. It's about show them that Islam is an alternative way of life and a superior one. And that whatever problem they're having, if there is something bothering them now, or if there is something specific, address that. And if not, just provoke thought, agitate thought. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when he went to Quraysh and he talked to them, he didn't just say, Allah is one and I am his messenger. He challenged the beliefs that Quraysh had at the time, the burying of the daughters, the gambling, the cheating. He challenged these things and he said, you know the way that you guys do things? Our way is better. And that was to agitate them and to make them think, oh, he's got a point. In the exact same way, we should try to provoke thought amongst people. Rather than just simply, don't just give them a leaflet on Islam and think that's it. You have to show them that this is something serious. This will blow your mind if you know what it really is. And really that's the advice I give, that show them that Islam, it's not just an alternative, but it is superior.
In the last couple of months, I've known a few brothers who are Muslims, alhamdulillah, and started to practice Islam. And I've also known a brother who's embraced Islam as well. But since they've come and started practicing Islam, come into Islam, they've facing a lot of hardship, such as the pressure from family, relatives, and all this Islamophobia issues. What kind of advice would you give to these brothers?
In terms of the hardships that you go through, things like that, I'll tell you a little bit more of my story, inshallah, give you a perspective on it. After I took the Shahada, it was a Friday night when I took the Shahada, and this was a mistake on my part, and I admit it, and I regret it to this day. But I didn't actually tell my parents what I was thinking of doing. So I came home that night and I said, hey, I've got something to tell you. I've become a Muslim. And their initial reaction was, whoa, okay, that's a bit strange, but fine. You've made a choice, that's your way of life. You can do that, we can't really say anything. I went to work the next day, and when I came home, all the lights were switched off, and there was no food made. And I thought, okay, something strange has happened, something's going on. I went upstairs, and I found my mum, my dad, and my brother, and they were sat on the sofa together, and they said, we want to talk to you. And I thought, right, okay, I know what's coming. And then it came out, who have you been talking to? Why have you done this? What's wrong with you? Why would you want to do this? You've betrayed us. You're not one of us anymore. You need to get out. And they started to really get upset, and it got to the point where my mum actually said to me, she said, I'd rather you came home and told me you were gay than what you come home and told me. And I thought, okay, maybe I've made a mistake. Maybe this isn't right. My mum, she was in tears, like screaming, banging on the door, and I locked myself in my room and thought, I can't deal with this. And I thought, you know what, it's not too late. All I have to do is just not answer my phone. When those brothers who I've met, those Muslims who I've met, when they call me up, I don't have to see them again, it's fine. I can just ignore their calls and I can leave it, and I can forget all about it, and it's just been a mistake. And I thought maybe that's what I should do, because look how upset they are. And they were kicking me out of the house. I was packing my bags as I was thinking this. And then it hit me that, because whether they're upset with me or not, doesn't change the fact that those words are there in the Quran. It doesn't suddenly erase them off the page. That text is still there. Whether they accept me or not doesn't make a difference to the fact that Allah has to be there. He has to be watching me. And whether they accept me or not, ultimately, I'm not really here for them. That yeah, I love them, and yeah, I respect them. But the Quran says, if your parents and your children and your friends and your wealth and your business and the things that you might lose, if those are dearer to you than Allah and His Messenger, then wait and see the judgment that you get. And so I went through it all again in my mind. Okay, is this definitely true? And yeah, I thought, well, it has to be. So I'm just going to have to leave the house. So I packed my bags and I walked down the drive. And perhaps it was the sight of seeing someone leaving the house or something. But my mum, she said, look, come back and go to bed and we'll talk about it in the morning. So I thought, okay. So I went to bed. The next morning, back 7 o'clock. All right, get up. We want to talk to you. Who have you been talking to? Same thing again. I wasn't supposed to be in work till 12, and I got there for about 10 o'clock just to get out of the house. And this went on for quite a while, a number of months. And ultimately, what I kept coming back to was that, look, as hard as this is, doesn't change the fact that it's true. And whether I think it's hard or not, and whether it's something I want to commit to or not, and whether my old way of life was more comfortable or not, it doesn't really matter. Because truth will always stay as truth. And so when I see brothers who do start to practice, and when I see people who do come into Islam, and then they're faced with that, why are you growing a beard? Why are you suddenly dressing like that? Why have you got a scarf on? Because Allah wants me to do this. And ultimately what these people think and what pressure you get and the looks that you get, imagine the looks that those people will get on the Day of Judgment. And so really when you do go through difficulty in practicing Islam, and when you do find it hard, this society isn't really, like I said, it's something that really wants you to keep your religion to yourself and not really spread it about and not really go out there with it. And so it's not going to fit in 100% of the time. It's not really going to click as well as it should. And so we will face hardship. And it comes down to this, that yes, this has to be true. So the advice I would give is always go through it in your head. Think, do I actually believe that this is true and that what I'm doing is correct? And if you do, inshallah, that will give you what you need to persevere. Will we take the original one? Yeah.
How did your friends take it when they heard you reverted?
Okay. Like I say, that was my family side of it. And actually, since then, I moved out in the end. My parents have not accepted it. MashaAllah, they're a lot better with me now than they ever were. In fact, I was just saying to somebody today that I actually think they respect me now more than they ever did, because they've seen me almost going from a boy into a man. They've seen me become something and have standards and principles. My older brother, he didn't really want to know. I haven't really spoken to him since I took the Shahada 3 years. He just doesn't think I exist. Again, he went on to say to me, I'd rather you hung yourself than did what you did. He doesn't want to know. In terms of my friends, it was strange because, when you graduate from uni, some of you may know, some of you will be yet to find out, a lot of the people you're in contact with, you will lose contact with them anyway. And everyone kind of goes their different ways and people start to live their lives. But those who who were kind of still local to me, my best friends who I grew up with, they accepted it. They knew it was okay. He's made a decision and this is what he wants to be. And initially there were some discussions about, look, why have you done this? Why have you made this choice? And again, I went through the whole thing with them and I thought, oh, okay. He knows why he's done it at least. And they didn't really challenge me on the decision. And again, the same thing happened with my parents. One day they challenged me on it and said, look, why have you done it? Why? Something came on the TV or something. I forget what it was. It was something about Islam. And my dad piped up with, what a load of nonsense. I thought, right. You should have said that. And we went through the whole discussion. And basically, their semi-Christian understanding that they had, I disproved that. Didn't manage to prove that Islam is the truth. They haven't accepted that yet. But if I can ask anything of you, it's that you make sincere dua that inshallah they do one day. Now, back to my friends, they did accept it, but again, they drifted away. And what I found was that the way of life that I lived with them and the things we used to do were simply incompatible with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me to do. And so I do still see them, very, only every now and then. And it's very rare. I mean, my best friend who I grew up with for years, he actually lives in Egypt now, of all places, and his dad was actually Muslim. So, inshallah, there's maybe something there as well, and hopefully one day, inshallah. But really, it is about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he says that the company that you keep is either like that of the blacksmith or the one who sells perfume. That one, he'll leave you smelling of the smoke and the grime and the dirt, and the other will leave you smelling pure and of perfume and beautiful. That the company that you keep, it has to now be in line with the lifestyle that you live. And so that's what I did. I surrounded myself with brothers who were able to help me, and alhamdulillah, I do think I've become better for it. But inshallah, my family and my friends, those who I'm still in contact with, please do make dua for them.
Brothers? Yeah. Now the 75% are going to choose to talk to you, and then one Muslim.
Yeah.
Do you think of the 74% kind of talking, why do you think the reason they don't speak to you is it because they're known as Muslims but they don't want to be active, like you were just mentioning? Is it lack of knowledge? What do you think the main reason is?
You know, it's strange because at the place there were brothers who worked there who, you know, they were. I mean, there was one brother there who he'd studied in Darul Uloom, and he'd been abroad. He'd studied abroad. He had a massive beard. He came in every week wearing the jubba, everything. And this brother never said anything to me about Islam. He didn't really talk to me. And there were plenty of them, brothers there they came up fully dressed, you know, mashallah, they went to pray, everything, but it never occurred to them to come to speak to me about Islam. 2 reasons, I think, for that. Number one is that Muslims, they don't have confidence. We don't have confidence in our deen that what I've got is the truth and what you've got is false. And if you want to discuss it, bring it on. If you know that, if you have that thought when you go into a discussion, even if this person throws something at you that you can't necessarily answer, like I say, Islam's got a rule for everything. You can say, okay, I'll come back. We'll come back and we'll discuss that later. And that's what actually happened with me and the brother who I was chatting to. Sometimes I came out with things that he didn't really know how to answer. And he went, okay, I'll come back. And mashallah, he did every time he came back. So confidence. Muslims, they don't have confidence that what is our deen actually worth to us. You know, at the masjid local to where I live, they gave a talk last September, August, just after Ramadan, and it was about how to survive university. Don't know why I went, because alhamdulillah, I graduated. I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I went to university before I was Muslim. SubhanAllah. You guys go through some trials, man. But the talk was on how to survive university, and you know what their advice was? It was basically, if you get into a situation when somebody challenges Islam, don't talk to them. No, SubhanAllah, is that what your deen is worth? That if somebody says something bad, you just go, yeah. Is that it? No, our deen is the most beautiful thing imaginable. And if somebody does change it, we should know that. We should have confidence to think, hang on, not be aggressive with them, but think, who are you to challenge it? And to learn the arguments. If there are arguments out there, if there are things that people say, oh, you guys, you have 4 wives, that's barbaric. You say you can sleep with as many people as you want every night. Which is worse? Which is more barbaric? That their way of life, they think that's better than ours? That they think our deen is again, and this is the second point, that it's just something that you should keep to yourself, keep it behind closed doors, keep it in the mosque. Like I say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this book to lead mankind out of darkness and into light. And so it's these 2 factors that the society we live in naturally, religion isn't taken seriously. And this has affected a lot of Muslims, that they don't feel confident to go out there and to talk about it. And even though these brothers, like I mentioned, where I worked, they were very pious people. Because maybe they didn't feel comfortable chatting about it, because maybe they didn't think that, oh, he's going to be interested. They just left it. Yeah, maybe I wouldn't have been interested, but the least they should have done would have been said something about it. And like I say, the brother who did eventually get me to take the Shahada, he never even approached me with intention of converting me. Whenever he mentioned Islam, it was just telling me little bits about it, so I had a perspective, so I knew that, okay, these Muslims, you know, they kind of know what they're talking about, at least they know why they're doing what they do. So confidence, brothers and sisters, is key. When the Prophet ﷺ went out there, when the Wahi first came and he got revelation, and he went home to Khadija radiallahu anha, and he was wrapped in his cloak. When the command came for him to carry this message to mankind, what did he say to Khadija as he left the house? She said, where are you going? And he turned around and he said, from this day, there will be no rest. Because he understood that this is something now that I have to take out there. I'm not just going to keep it at home. I'm not just going to stay and just live my life in my own little bubble. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to tell people about this. Which, inshallah, is a duty on all of us. We're taking a bit.
What advice would you give to Muslims that refer to other than the deen of Allah? Are you allowing the society to dictate what is right and what is wrong?
again. The whole thing about the manual. That we've got a problem and we need to solve it. Okay, should we look at Islam? No, in fact, it doesn't even get that far. That question doesn't even get asked usually. It's just let's ask around, let's ask people what can we do. That they won't even think of Islam as a solution. And so people that start to live their lives according to everything else that comes up. Now, again, there's a hadith of the Prophet where he warned the Muslims about the Ahlul Kitab, and he said, did they not make their rabbis and their priests their gods, their lords? And one of them, a Christian monk, he complained to the Prophet and he said, no, we didn't. We don't worship our monks. And the Prophet he said, oh, well, did you not make the halal haram and the haram halal? Did you not dictate to people the way that they should live their lives, other than what your scripture said, other than what you claim God said? And they said, yes, we did. And they said, that's why. Because for us, when we say La ilaha illallah, it doesn't just mean there's no God but Allah. It doesn't just mean one. It doesn't just mean oneness. When the Prophet ﷺ came with this message, why was it so controversial? Because it wasn't the fact he was saying there's only one God. The Quraysh, they ultimately believed there was only one. They just believed that the idols were intermediaries. And there were Christians and Jews at the time who believed that there was one God. They didn't have an issue with that. What they had an issue with was what the Prophet ﷺ was saying, was that we don't obey anyone else except Allah. He is the only one who can decide that which is right and that which is wrong. That was why it was so controversial. That was why they tried to stop him, because they understood, hang on, if people are only listening now to what Allah says, all of a sudden we're nothing. Our power, our tribes, everything is gone. And so they literally went to war with him to try to protect themselves, because they feared the importance of his message. So when Muslims now, when they look to other ways of life, again, have they really understood what their deen is? That this is something that, no matter what, you can solve any problem with this. And now, when this question comes up, and it's coming up a lot more and more, the relevance of our deen, and you know, how does it practically fit into our lives? Number one is we need knowledge of it. We need knowledge of our deen. To be able to refer to it, you have to learn about it. Again, you're not going to know what Islam says if you haven't looked into it. But at the same time, if you don't know, you go to somebody for advice. And that person should be someone who is out there carrying this message, who is active in dawah, because they know, okay, this is how you should solve your problems. And a beautiful example of this is that, I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, accept the truth even if it comes from someone who you hate. And that's about sincerity, that if somebody says something to you that's true, if somebody says, you know, you have to do what Islam says on this, you should still accept it. And a very beautiful example, which not someone who you hate, but again about someone who knows their stuff, someone who is sincere in their deen. When the slander was made against Aisha radiallahu anha, this was the most difficult thing that the Prophet ﷺ ever went through in his life. He said that not the wars, not the battles, not even seeing the Muslims get tortured. When the people in Medina said these things about his wife, it was horrible for him. Now he, at the time, basically, because it was so serious, revelation actually stopped for this time. No verses were revealed while this was going on until Aisha radiallahu anha was obviously declared innocent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. During that whole time, nothing was revealed. And the people, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum in Medina, they started to get worried. And during this whole time, the Prophet ﷺ, he only spoke to two people about the issue. And then this is what I said about getting advice. The first person he spoke to was Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. And he went to him, and of course, he was his son-in-law. And so he didn't really like seeing how upset the Prophet ﷺ was. And his advice was actually, you know, if this is making you feel so bad, you can get married again. The whole plenty more fish in the sea kind of argument. He said, look, you can get married again, you can find someone else. But this didn't sit well with the Prophet ﷺ because Aisha was his beloved. And so there was a second person who he went to talk to, and it was Osama bin Zayd. He went to talk to him and he said, what should I do? Tell me what I should do. And his advice to the Prophet ﷺ was, look, if you think there might be some truth in what's been said, he said, Aisha, he said, ask her maiden, her attendant, because she's with her all of the time, and she will tell you how to fix this problem. She knows her better. She'll tell you if anything's gone on. The Prophet ﷺ took his advice, and he went to see the maid, and she said, Like Allah, Aisha loves Allah and His Messenger more than anyone I know. If I could find any fault with her, she said, it would be that when we cook the bread, she falls asleep and the goat steals the bread. She said that's the only fault I can find. And based on this, the Prophet ﷺ thought, okay, you know what, that's kind of answered it for me. Now that, he went to Osama bin Zayd for advice, because Osama bin Zayd knew about the deen. He knew about what Islam says about going to sort things. Of course, the Prophet ﷺ didn't need to. He knew the deen better than anyone. But this was an example for us. Osama bin Zayd was 13 years old. When the Prophet ﷺ went to talk to him, he was 13 years old. And so no matter who you think this person is, no matter what they're saying, no matter what advice they're giving or what perception you have of them, if this is someone who's out there, who's giving dawah, who's telling people about Islam, then go to them and ask them, look, I've got this problem, what does Islam say, how should I solve it? And that's the best advice I can give, that someone who's out there, someone who's carrying the deen. Like I say, when I had my problems, when I was talking, it was the brother who gave dawah to me. He had the answers I needed. And that's the best advice I can give, that go to someone who is carrying the dawah, and at the same time do your own learning, because you can't know that Islam can solve your problems if you haven't found a solution.
Yeah.
What would you say to people who say, I just want to live my life and aspire to, non-Muslim models, both Muslims and non-Muslims?
They just want to live their lives.
Yeah, like, I don't want to think about it, that sort of attitude.
Yeah, again, after I took the Shahada, there was at the time I mentioned, I started to see Muslims doing things they shouldn't have done. It used to really, really frustrate me, and I used to say to Muslims, don't you know that what you're doing is not right? And the answer I always got was, well, yeah, but I'm going to hell anyway. They used to say that, and I thought, what? And the first time I heard it, I thought, I didn't go ballistic, but I thought I have to do something, I have to say something. And I said, okay, you think you're going to hell? I said, imagine if I came into your house and you were getting in bed, and I stood by your bed and I went, when you wake up, I'm going to push you down the stairs. You wouldn't just go, oh, well, you're going to push me down the stairs, it's fine, just go to sleep anyway. You'd be worried about it all night, you'd do everything you could. You'd go, Dad, there's some guy in the house and he says he's going to push me. You'd do everything you could to try and fix that problem, to try and sort it out. You wouldn't just leave it. If somebody says, oh, I'm going to hell anyway, would they really believe that? Because if they did, if they knew, yeah, that's where I'm definitely going, so what can I do? They'd worry about it every night, and they'd do everything they could to try and fix that. And this is the thing, that what we believe, it shows in our actions. And when people do say, look, I just want to live my life, there's a distinction between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. For a Muslim, of course, you have to explain to them. Effectively, it is very similar arguments, because it depends what their deen is worth to them. That you have to make them know that this is definitely true. It's not just something like when I was a Christian, that, yeah, I believe in it, but I'm not really going to do it. Same thing, but you have to prove to them that this is definitely true. It's not just something you believe, it's not just what your parents have told you. This is something that's built on evidence and proof. And not only does Islam prove itself, it challenges everything else to disprove it. With the non-Muslim who says, I do just want to live my life. Again, we addressed it earlier, that you have to agitate that thinking, that if they think, yeah, the way I'm doing things is the best way of doing things, prove to them that it's not. Show them the flaw in what they're doing. That's what the Prophet ﷺ did in Mecca. He used to go around and say, again, even Ibrahim a.s., we know the example of when he smashed up the idols, and he left the axe with the tallest one. That was to say that, okay, you guys have got you think you just want to live your lives and the way you're doing things makes sense. Think again. And that's the way to do it. You have to agitate that thinking within a person's mind, because that was what really pushed me as well.
Take a Richard. Okay. Sisters, have you got any more questions? Brother?
I've got two questions actually. When you were talking about your parents that weren't happy with you converting to Islam, have you ever asked them why?
Yeah.
Or what they say? I've got another question apart from that.
Okay.
Is it because ever since the 9/11 has happened, a lot of people, their mind is set, and especially non-Muslims, that all 9/11 was an incident which occurred because of Muslims, and that's automatic hatred. And that just planted a seed in anyone's head, especially non-Muslims, that will just because he's a Muslim, just because he's got big beard. If I see one on the bus, okay, it reminds you of the 9/11, it reminds you of the Muslim, it reminds you of got hatred for Islam. Is that one of the reasons?
I think that's the biggest reason.
Just because bunch of Muslims. You
Yeah.
can't blame the whole race.
Exactly.
So why is it that a lot of non-Muslims automatically have got that hatred when they can just say to themselves, you can't blame the whole race because of those few people? Because they're going to get ahead anyway.
Exactly. Now, the best example you can think of is Anders Breivik, the guy who did the shootings in Norway. He was a fundamentalist, religious fundamentalist, Christian fundamentalist. He went out and he shot more than 70 people dead. Now, when that happened, all of a sudden, like you said, just because one person has done it, does that now mean that whenever we see a Christian on the bus, we think, oh, he's got a gun, better avoid it? No, because we don't just write them off like that. It's the actions of an individual or a group of individuals. So why is it that when it's Muslims, everybody does have that perception? Everybody sees a Muslim and the first thing they think is, okay, Islam is, it's dangerous. It's because of the media. A fire will start as a little flame, but if you fan the flame, it will burn the building down. The media gives such an image of Islam. You can't watch the news. Yeah, if you watch BBC News 24, you can't have an hour go by that doesn't mention something to do with a Muslim. No matter what, every single day, unless it's like one of the talk shows they have or something. If it's the main news and you switch that off, they'll mention Islam at some point. Why? Because the media is fanning these flames. You look in the papers, you look on TV, you look on the internet, Muslims this, Muslims that. Especially with, and look at what's happened, that they created this Islamic kind of boogeyman. But this is something you should fear, and this is something that people should stay away from. And so now when people think of Islam, they're instantly given this perception that, oh, it's something bad. And what they'll do is, they'll find that, I was reading the Metro not long ago, and there was a story on it. It was a Somalian. And this guy, he was something like 110 years old. And he got married to a 17-year-old. Yeah? Now that had happened in Somalia, okay? Now that was on, I think it was like page 2 or 3 or 4, like right at the front of the paper. And it was a big full-page spread, picture of them both, the happy couple, everything, talking about it. It's, tying it back to Islam, that, it was an Islamic ceremony, to create a perception in people's minds that this is what Islam's all about. No mention of the fact that how often do they uncover a paedophile ring or things like that in Britain? How often do they find that things even worse are going on here? Yeah, they don't focus on that. They don't give those things a full-page spread. Why? They'll focus on specific stories about Muslims to create a certain perception. To make us feel bad about our deen, to make us not have that confidence, and to make people just write it off and forget about it. So when my parents heard the word Islam come out of my mouth, the first thing that went through their head must have been, like you say, images of all kinds of things.
Yeah, but did you then tell them that?
I explained to them, of course, that this isn't what Islam's about. And like I said before, they understand that now. That this is, and when you actually sit down and you address that and you explain to them that no, Islam doesn't say these things. Islam doesn't just, kill innocent people.
It goes back to the original point where that probably has a knock-on effect on Muslims, especially young Muslims.
Because Muslims then don't have
Having that
confidence.
kind of being as the other and not wanting to be, I'm a Muslim, that's fine, but I don't need to go on and promote it.
Exactly.
So what you were saying, do you not think, alhamdulillah, we should, like, if we take anything from this book, it's try and combat that and actually respect ourselves and know that we're proud to be Muslims, and actually try and combat views like
what we
like
see.
you were saying, that people like that have, because when you finish university and you go to work, you'll meet so many more different people, it'll get worse by all means. You'll get different managers and everything that will judge you on your appearance and your religion and everything. And that's where it comes into play, that's where you can go out.
Yeah, and that's where
you
the
can
test
comment
comes.
and giving that one and everything like that.
And the thing is that, like I say, I explained it to my parents, and after 1 or 2 discussions, they understand that now. They understand that that's got nothing to do with it. Even, they used to, like I say, Islam's always on the news. I used to sit there at my mum and dad's house, and a story would come on about Islam, and I think, oh no, I hope it's something good. Please don't be something, And it always was something bad. And so I always used to have to say, look, this isn't the case. There's more to it than that. I don't have to do that anymore. When something comes on about Islam, my parents, they know, oh yeah, it's not really true. Islam's not about that. Because they've seen in me an example. Now I was able to address that with them and talk to them about that. How many people out there are there who don't have that, who haven't had somebody come up to them and address them and tell them about it? And this is Muslims as well as non-Muslims. Even amongst Muslims, there are so many misconceptions about our deen. So, like the brother said, mashallah, that if I could leave you with a point tonight, it would be that, yeah, have confidence in your deen and do carry it out there to people. Because we talk about following what the Prophet ﷺ did. That's exactly what he did. That's what he was sent here to do.
We take one last question now. One last one. Okay, that's this one.
How do you tell someone that's already Muslim and they believe there's a God, but they're not sure of the God or whether Islam is the truth? How do you give dawah in that case?
Okay, this is probably one of the most common issues. A Muslim who they're not really sure. They know there's something out there, but they're not really sure. What you have to do is understand, first of all, because everyone's different on a case-to-case basis. The people may believe Islam because it's what their parents gave them. They may believe Islam because it's just always been around them. It's just what you do. A lot of people, they'll stay with their deen even if they're not sure because they're afraid to do anything else. What we have to do is understand, first of all, the problems that these people are having. Why is it that they're not confident in Islam? Why is it that they have these worries? And then we address them. And we were having this discussion on the way here, actually, while we were stuck in traffic and we didn't have anything else to do. We were talking about what should really motivate a person. Should it be their emotions or should it be their thoughts? What should make a person think that, yeah, you know what, I need to do something? And the example that we used while we were in the car was whenever you see something on the news, something bad's happened to the Muslims or something like that, you get riled up and you think, you know what, I need to go out and I need to do something about it. Well, over time that will fizzle out. That will stop. The cartoons of the Prophet ﷺ I mentioned earlier, hundreds of thousands of people came out. They're still insulting the Prophet ﷺ today. But those people, they're not out on the streets. Why? Because when your emotions motivate you and when you do something because of a feeling that you get, feelings will fizzle out. Feelings don't last. You could be having the best day and think, yeah, you know what, I'm going to pray Isha tonight, and I'm not just going to pray my Farad, I'm going to pray my Sunnah, I'm going to pray my Nafil, I'm going to do the whole 17, and then I'm going to pray Tahajjud. And then the next day, a car can drive through a puddle and soak you, and you can think, well, forget it then, I'm having a rubbish day. And your motivation's gone, because that emotional, that sensation you had is gone. And a lot of Muslims, a lot of people in general will go up and down based on how their life is going. And it comes back to the point we made earlier that whether you are having that difficulty or not doesn't change what Islam says, doesn't change that it's there. And so really, if a Muslim is having that issue there, they're not really sure about Islam, they don't really know if it's the case or not. More often than not, these people are being motivated just by their emotions. That the first night of Tarawih, they'll be there. Second night, they'll be there. Third, fourth. You know, maybe every now and then. And then the 27th, they'll be there. And then again, after that, no. Why? Because there's that buzz, there's that emotional high, and it's just what everybody does. Islam is there for them because it's what everybody does. They believe in it, but they're not sure, and you have to build within them that it's not built on their emotions. It's not built on any feeling that you have. You should still have those feelings and emotions, and you should still feel that love, but it's based on what you actually think, what you actually carry in your mind. Do I know that this is true? Do I actually, and not just think, do I think it's true? Do I know? I.e., can anybody prove to me that this is false? If that's not there, if nobody can, then that will motivate you. And like I say, even when I had problems with my family, that was what I came back to. So if someone is having that issue, build within them the proofs of Islam, the basis of it. Even if they're a Muslim, say, do you know why you are a Muslim? See what they say and go from there. And build within them that this is haq, this is true, and that nothing can disprove it. And when you give them, again, that confidence, inshallah, they'll build on that.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا واسعا مباركا كما يحب ربنا ويرضى اللهم لك الحمد كثيرا ولك الشكر كثيرا لك الحمد على ما أعطيت ولك الحمد على ما أبقيت لك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما نحول به بيننا وبين معاصيك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا ومتعنا اللهم بأسماعنا وأبصارنا وقوتنا أبدا ما أبقيتنا، واجعله الوارث منا، واجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا، وانصرنا على من عادانا، ولا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا. اللهم لا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا. اللهم لا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا، ولا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا ولا إلى النار مصيرنا، واجعل الجنة هي دارنا وقرارنا، ولا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك فينا ولا يرحمنا، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اهدنا لأحسن الأعمال والأقوال، لا يهدي لأحسنها إلا أنت، واصرف عنا سيئها، لا يصرف عنا سيئها إلا أنت. اللهم إنا نسألك الجنة وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل، ونعوذ بك من النار وما قرب إليها من قول وعمل، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات، إنك يا مولانا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين.